into the wild silence. I'd always thought of Alaska as the final frontier, a place where silence had weight and the wilderness stretched farther than imagination. When I first set foot on the trail that cut into the endless expanse of spruce and pine, I felt more excitement than fear. My backpack was heavy, but my spirit was light. This was supposed to be a week of solitude, a test of strength, maybe even a cleansing of the mind. The morning air was sharp, crystalline, carrying the scent of resin and damp earth. Ravens wheeled above, their cries echoing against the snow-dusted ridges. I had studied the map carefully, marked the route with neat red lines, and packed enough supplies for 7 days. But Alaska does not care about plans. Alaska swallows maps, bends time, and makes a man feel like a trespasser. By the time the sun dipped low, spilling fire across the jagged peaks, I realized the trail had vanished. What was once a clear path was now nothing but tangled brush and snow patches. I checked my compass. It spun slightly, uncertain, as if even the magnetism of this land refused to yield. I told myself it was fine. I would find the trail again. I always had. But the forest thickened, shadows pooled between the trunks, and every step seemed to carry me deeper into the unknown. That night I lit a fire, small and crackling, and ate jerky under a canopy of indifferent stars. Yet, as the wind whispered through the branches, a new sound crawled into my awareness, a heavy rustle, deliberate and slow. Something was moving out there. I froze, every nerve awake. Then came the low, guttural huff, the kind of sound that does not belong to deer or wolf. My chest tightened. Somewhere in the dark, a grizzly bear was breathing the same air as me. The shadow of the grizzly. Sleep never came. The night stretched endless, filled with imagined movements and the memory of that single breath from the unseen beast. When dawn finally spilled pale light through the branches, I felt relief, but it was brittle and thin. I packed quickly, dousing the embers of my fire, and pressed deeper into the woods. My plan was simple. Head east, find the river, follow it downstream until I reach signs of civilization. But Alaska had other plans. By midday, the forest grew thicker, the air damp with the smell of moss and rot. I found tracks in the mud huge, fresh, unmistakable. The pad marks were as wide as my hand, claws digging deep like knives. My stomach knotted. The grizzly wasn't just passing through. It was near. I remembered every survival tip I had ever read. Don't run, don't climb, don't make sudden moves. But those were lines from a book. Out here, where trees groaned in the wind and the silence pressed heavy, the reality was different. The thought that a massive predator might be stalking me with patience was enough to set my pulse into overdrive. Hours passed. Every cracking twig behind me felt like footsteps. Every shifting shadow could have been fur. I told myself I was imagining it. That paranoia was gnawing at me. But when I stopped to drink from a stream, I saw it. Across the water, half hidden by the trees, a hulking shape moved. Brown fur glistened in the shards of sunlight. A massive head, a muzzle testing the air. The grizzly. Our eyes met. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to nothing but that gaze, dark, primal, unreadable. Then it huffed, low and thunderous, and vanished into the brush. But it wasn't gone. It was watching, waiting. Hunger and fear. The next 2 days bled together in a haze of hunger and dread. My food supplies were running thin. I had planned for a week, but I hadn't planned for being lost. The jerky was almost gone, the last granola bar eaten in tiny bites to stretch it out. I tried fishing in a stream with makeshift gear, but the fish slipped through my grasp. My stomach ached, but fear was stronger than hunger, because I knew the grizzly was followed. At night I heard its branches snapping, the heavy thud of paws pressing the earth. Sometimes it came closer, circling my camp, testing my nerves. I waved a burning branch, shouted into the dark, but silence always answered. Silence, and the feeling of being prey. On the third morning, I discovered claw marks on a tree near where I had slept. Deep, deliberate, high above my head. A message, carved by strength that dwarfed mine. This is my forest. You don't belong here. I kept moving, step after weary step, through valleys and ridges that seemed endless. My body grew weaker, my lips cracked with thirst, yet my senses sharpened. I could feel the bear before I heard it. Sometimes I caught glimpses, a dark shadow slipping between trees, the flash of movement just at the edge of vision. Always there, always near. Alaska was not just testing me, it was hunting me through the eyes of that beast, the river of no mercy. By the fourth day, I stumbled upon the river I had been searching for. It cut through the valley like a silver blade, cold and merciless, rushing with snowmelt from the mountains. Relief surged through me, water, a natural path, maybe even a chance to navigate back to people. But the river was no salvation. It was wild, swollen with spring currents that roared like a beast of their own. Crossing it would be suicide. Following it downstream was the only choice. I drank deeply, the icy water burning down my throat. As I crouched there, I felt the prickle at the back of my neck, the unmistakable sense of eyes on me. Slowly, I turned my head. Across the riverbank, 30 yards away, the grizzly stood. Its fur was matted with damp, shoulders rolling with each slow breath. The bear was colossal, at least 8 feet tall if it rose on its hind legs, muscles shifting under the thick hide. Its eyes were small, dark, unreadable, but locked on me. For long minutes, neither of us moved. The river thundered between us, and I clung to that fragile barrier. My hand gripped a fallen branch like it was a weapon, though I knew it was nothing more than a twig against that monster. Then, with a low growl that reverberated through the valley, the bear turned and disappeared into the trees. Relief washed over me, but it was poisoned by dread. The bear wasn't leaving, it was circling, testing me, and the river that seemed like a shield would soon become a trap. No, a game of shadows. The days blurred into a twisted game of cat and mouse, or rather, bear and man. Every time I thought I'd gained distance, I would find fresh tracks in the mud, steaming scat in the grass, or hear the deep echo of its huff carried by the wind. The bear was following me, relentless as the river itself. Nights became torture. I barely slept, starting awake at every sound. I began to build fires not for warmth, but as beacons, small circles of defiance against the darkness pressing from all sides. I hung strips of my clothing on branches to throw off my scent, but it felt useless. A grizzly's nose could catch me from miles away. Once, at dusk, as I gathered wood, I caught sight of movement in the shadows. I froze. There it was, half hidden behind the pines, its massive head tilting slightly as it watched me. The firelight flickered in its eyes, making them gleam with something ancient and merciless. I shouted, waved my arms, hurled a rock into the trees. The bear didn't flinch. It only stood, unblinking, until the forest swallowed it again. I realized then that this wasn't chance. It wasn't simply a bear wandering its territory. It had chosen me. I was no longer a hiker lost in the Alaskan wild. I was prey. Breaking point. On the 6th night, the storm came. Wind howled through the trees, bending them until they creaked and snapped. Rain lashed down in icy sheets, drenching my meager fire until it hissed and died. Darkness wrapped around me, thick and absolute. Huddled beneath a leaning spruce, I shivered violently, teeth chattering as the cold gnawed into my bones. Hunger was a dull ache now, replaced by weakness that made every limb feel heavy. My mind spun in circles, replaying the same question over and over. How much longer can I last? Then came the sound. Not the storm, not the river, but something heavier. A snapping branch, a guttural huff. The storm was cover the perfect hunting ground. Through the sheets of rain I glimpsed it. The grizzly, closer than ever, its massive shape shifting between trees like a nightmare made flesh. The storm masked its movements, but every instinct in me screamed danger. I staggered to my feet, clutching a burning branch I had snatched from the fire before it died. The flames sputtered in the rain, but it was all I had. "Stay back!" I screamed, voice raw, swallowed by the storm. The bear stepped closer, the earth trembling under its weight. My heart hammered so loud I could barely hear the thunder. I waved the branch wildly, sparks flying. For a heartbeat, the bear paused. Then, with a roar that shook my soul, it lunged. I ran. Branches whipped my face, mud sucked at my boots, and the storm drowned out everything but the thunder of pursuit behind me. I didn't think, didn't plan, I only ran. The image of those jaws snapping shut at my heels burned into my mind. When I burst through the trees and stumbled onto a rocky outcrop, I realized too late. The ground ended. Below me, the river churned in a frenzy of white water. Behind me, the bear roared. I had no choice. With a desperate cry, I hurled myself into the raging torrent. The river's grip. The river swallowed me whole. Freezing water punched the breath from my lungs, dragging me into its furious current. My body tumbled, spun, slammed against rocks as though I were nothing more than driftwood. Every time I clawed for air, the torrent pulled me under again. I fought, flailing, lungs burning, until instinct forced me to let the current carry me. If I resisted, I would drown. If I surrendered completely, I would drown. The balance was razor thin. Through the trial of fire and fury, the bear advanced, slow and deliberate, every step pressing into the earth like a drumbeat. My heart pounded in rhythm, but there was no place left to run. Behind me, the valley dropped steep into jagged stone. Ahead, the bear filled the world. I grabbed a rock, jagged and heavy, my last weapon. My ribs screamed as I lifted it, but I stood my ground. The bear roared a sound that split the air, that shook the marrow of my bones. It charged. Time slowed. I saw the blur of fur, the flash of claws, the cavern of its jaws. I hurled the rock with every ounce of strength left in me. It struck the bear's muzzle. Not enough to stop it, but enough to stagger it for a heartbeat. I dove aside, rolling across the dirt as its massive paw slammed where I had stood, gouging earth. The impact rattled through me, but adrenaline burned hotter than pain. I snatched up a broken branch, its end charred from my fire the night before. With a scream torn from the depths of my being, I thrust it forward as the bear lunged again. The burning wood struck its face. Sparks hissed. The beast recoiled, bellowing, swiping the branch from my hands. For a moment, chaos consumed us fire, earth, blood, roar. Then silence fell. The bear stood, chest heaving, eyes locked on mine. Blood streaked its muzzle, smoke curling from its singed fur. I was crouched on the ground, breath ragged, weaponless, beaten. But I didn't look away. Something passed between us in that silence, something primal, something ancient. Not hatred, not victory, recognition. The bear huffed once. A sound like thunder softened, then turned. Slowly, powerfully, it vanished into the trees. It had chosen to let me live. Or perhaps it had judged that I had earned the right to. Out of the wild, I collapsed where I stood, every nerve aflame, every muscle trembling. The stars wheeled above, cold and eternal. I should have felt fear or relief, but instead there was only stillness. When dawn broke, I forced myself to move. Step by step, crawling at times, I followed the faint trail I had glimpsed the night before. Hours passed, the sun climbing, my body screaming for rest. But at last, through the blur of exhaustion, I saw it. A cabin, smoke rising faintly from its chimney. A figure moving outside. Civilization. Salvation. I stumbled forward, half delirious, collapsing at the edge of the clearing. A voice shouted. Hands grabbed me, pulled me into warmth, into safety. But as I drifted into unconsciousness, one thought burned brighter than all others. I had faced the wilderness, faced the grizzly, faced death itself, and I had walked out alive.